Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us to stay curious. We're staying curious today with NASA on our mind and the budget cuts proposed by the Trump administration. We're going to look at those. And we just went a few minutes late today, but not because of my buddy Marty, who is on time. There's Marty. All right. Flat Marty there. He is on vacation up in the New England states. Marty, we miss you here. We had a good little rainstorm going on here. There's your flat Marty for you, or his dimensionally challenged Marty, if you want to, as Dave Stange calls it there. So, yep, one of those days where I've been more directing the museum than I have been putting together Stay Curious. But something I want to talk about today is about the rumors that have surfaced this week about some deep cuts. NASA could possibly lose 1/4 of their budget, which of course is not a good thing, but this all has to be approved by Congress. Okay. So maybe some of the more spacey heads, let's say, will prevail. And but some of the cuts, I'm just as a non this as my own opinion, and I'll say that a few times. My own opinion is some of these cuts were needed because too many people were sitting around making a lot of money with no goals in sight, no deadlines in sight. So you all can chime in with what you want to hear about it. As we saying hello to Doug Forrest, Dave Stange, Mitch Rothman, Julie Clay, Tom Usiak, and Steve Jokums have joined us already here. And I'm sure you might have a little bit of banter back and forth about how you feel about this. But the net, and I've got here as our backdrop the worm meatball, which I think is a cool look and a cool way to look at NASA in the 21st century. I'm not such a big fan of the worm, but that is the worm logo that was from 1975 to like 1995, then resurrected by Blue or SpaceX on the side of their Falcon 9 rocket. So that's a good look for us to talk about what the Trump administration's proposed 2026 skinny budget is what it all is called. Came out last week. It may slash $6 billion with a B out of NASA's $25 billion budget. That's 25% of it, the biggest single year cut in NASA's history. That can't happen. Come on, that's just silly, really. We know there's all segments of society that need money, but no segment of society, of the government, has changed society more than NASA has, and I hope you are landing there. But we're going to talk a little bit about the budget cuts affecting the Artemis program, particularly maybe the Gateway. What's going to happen with those test tubes laying on Mars' surface that were supposed to be coming back next year, but the vehicle wasn't even planned when Perseverance was launched to bring those test tubes back. And talk about defending our planet also. So a few things that we're going to talk about today on Stay Curious. So, but first we got a couple fun things to talk about. It's not fun to talk about NASA losing a lot of money. But hi, Marty, you're on there as I put up your face up there again. Say hi to everybody, Marty. Are you online? Nope, he must have hung up on me online.
No, well, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I had my mic muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, where is Flat Marty today in New England? He's still in Massachusetts?
I'm still in Williamstown, Massachusetts.
Williamstown, Massachusetts, for all of you up in that neck of the woods. So thank you, Marty, for breaking in today. Frankly, he would have to tell me how to do our Streamlabs, which we've done before, but I know he likes being part of it. So you want to chime in on something as a space worker, Marty, please do. We're looking forward to hearing from Gary Gerald, Dean Babcock, Robert Law, Connie McDaniel, and Tom Celentano. And thank you all for staying curious today. a little bit on the fly, but that's okay. Want to let all of you locals know and all of you out there in Cyberland that we do have a active STEAM program: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Art could be astronomy, aerospace, all kinds of things fit in that A. We're going to have with Natalia Sepulveda there, our volunteer STEAM teacher. She does a bilingual STEAM class. She has a master's degree in Spanish and loves talking about science with the kids in in a bilingual way. So this Saturday, and we still have some slots open. We're going to make 3D printing with Matthew Raj, showing kids how to do that. Matthew's one of our employees here at the American Space Museum. So thank you, Matthew and Natalia, particularly for wanting to do a STEAM program here once a month. It's very important to us to keep youth in our building and inspire their minds with what we've done. This I racked up. Pretend you're seeing this later. But yes, the budget cuts are going to hurt something called planetary defending from asteroids that could hit the Earth. And it's not a case of if, but when an asteroid about 5 miles across, the kind that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, will hit the Earth. We have this event once every few thousand years, it seems. But we'll talk a little more about that. Had some astronaut birthdays. Doug Wheelock, we wanted to say happy birthday to. Yesterday was Doug's birthday, born in Binghamton, New York, Marty. Binghamton, New York. Grew up in Windsor, New York. He's got almost 200 days in space. Wheels, as they call him. Turned 65 yesterday. So welcome to the senior citizen world. And then today, May 6th, 3 astronauts have their birthday today. Dave Leesma, shown here, is 76. Chukai Mukai, the first Japanese woman in space, is 73. And our friend Don Thomas is 70 years old. And we'll talk about Don here in a minute and Mukai. But David Cornell Leesma was born May 6, 1949 in Muskegon, Michigan. So we've got a Michigander and a Buckeye born today on May 6th. There's a beautiful picture Mark Usiak took of Leesma at the Astronaut Hall of Fame inductions. I think he was introducing Norm Thagard there in his induction. Norm introduced Leesma is the way it went, I believe. Anyway, he's in the Hall of Fame. 3 space flights, 22 days in space. One of the early mission specialists. 41G, 28, and STS-45 were his missions. But Dave Leesma was very important to NASA as the director of flight crew operations for many years. He saw 41 shuttle flights and 7 Mir missions as director of the NASA crews. And he chose the 15, 16, and 17 groups while director. So happy birthday to you, Dave Leesma, 76 years old. Don't know if he spends any time in Michigan, born in Muskegon. And why would he? I mean, no, that's just a joke. Of course, Michigan's getting now into its beautiful time of year up there with the foliage out and all those nice waterways to have some fun on. And Japan's space hero Chukai Mukai was born May 6, 1952 in Tatabushi, Gunma, Japan. And she is a physician, a surgeon, 2 flights, 23 days in space, STS-65, and then she went up on STS-95, the famous John Glenn mission. She's a cardiologist at the oldest university in Japan, the Keio University, and she's has been at the Tokyo University of Science. And of course, she's a JAXA technical advisor. And here she is with the only other Japanese woman to go to space, Yamakaze. She went up on STS-132, somewhere in there, 131. she flew in space. And there's Mukai with something on her plate there to eat, some CDs in the background at somebody's a birthday party, maybe. Uh, we praise her, and the Japanese people are just awesome. And I know a little about them because they come to our museum with a group of students 3 or 4 times a year, Japan, Florida, and Don Thomas is one of the speakers there. And so Don being born the same day as Japanese Mukai, I want to tell him about that, Marty. And there's a good picture of Don autographing something with that big smile on his face. Marty, Don was on the campus of Kennedy Space Center today for on his 70th birthday. I went out and saw Charlie Walker and got him to sign something and firmed up a date. Maybe 2 weeks we'll have Nick Thomas on here to talk about some Mercury missions. But Don is in town. Maybe he'll stop by after hours. You never know. But I wished him a happy birthday. There he is with the Cleveland Browns helmet. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio, one of 25 Buckeye astronauts, born in 1955. He's a materials scientist. Went to Cornell University, 4 space flights, 43 days in space. And he wrote about them in this book, Orbit of Discovery. Okay, got to read this book. It's next on my list. It's about an 11-year-old book, but the All-Ohio Crew, STS-70, and also about the northern flicker woodpecker that poked holes in the external tank and had to have STS-70 pulled back to the VAB to be repaired. Don did a hysterical talk about that at Shuttle Fest. Here he is doing what he loves to do. This man goes to 75 schools a year, more than one a week. He goes to 75 schools. They figure he sees about 100,000 kids a year. I wonder how many autographs he does, but he loves it. He's 70 years old now. Welcome to the septuagenarian world, Don Thomas. And there he is with Minori, one of the leaders of the Japanese group that comes here, and talking to her in front of our shuttle console there, his last visit. So, Don, we love you. You're a great person. And he gets the American Space Museum. There's a Tom Usiak photo of at our Shuttle Fest. He wore the woodpecker shirt that Gene Wright, thank you, Gene Wright made. He's wearing a special Woody Woodpecker patch of the STS-70 crew on there. Robert Law says that he was out stargazing, and the Beehive Cluster, Mars was in it last night. Yep, I need to go check that out. We were hoping it was going to rain last night, Robert. And he's going to meet Susan Kilran Friday in England. Robert, you'll love her. She's really an awesome person, a pilot of a space shuttle, could have been a commander, but she was raising a family, and her husband is not just a Navy SEAL, but he trains the Navy SEALs. So you'll love Susan. Still was her maiden name, Kilran. And so tell her we say hi, and maybe we'll get her at Shuttle Fest here. And happy birthday, Don. And actually, boy, I've got slides out of whack today for sure. Wanted to give a little love to Cinco de Mayo, all right? But let's final love to you, Don. Keep doing what you're doing. He and Nicole Stott are two of the hardest working astronauts out there. They are always talking to groups. Of course, they're getting paid for it, but they deserve it. And Don, not just because he's a Buckeye, but he's a good guy, and he gets us, and he's going to be part of our museum efforts down the road. So happy birthday to them all. Well, did you celebrate Cinco de Mayo yesterday? Well, I celebrated Alan Shepard Day, as May 5th, 1861 was when America's first spaceman did the suborbital flight that went down in the annuals as America's first foray into space. Now, he went up about 125 miles, all right. It just ain't no Kármán line and back down type of thing, just 60-some miles. But then he did orbit the Earth on Apollo 14 and walked on the moon. So we don't need to put him in the Karmanaut class, Marty. He's a full astronaut. The training is what makes a big difference. And then Gus Grissom repeated this, and then of course he flew on Gemini, the maiden flight of Gemini 3. So we don't even consider them Karmanauts at all. They also flew around the Earth. So a stamp, if you didn't know, was made of Alan Shepard. And of course, we have Alan Shepard Park in Cape Canaveral. I wish I could have met him. People that did meet him said he was a great guy. He did have a little bit of I'm the first American in space attitude, but why not? Admiral of the Navy. Okay. Then Apollo, he was going to train for Apollo 13, and they switched. He was the commander of Apollo 14 with 15 minutes of flight with two rookies, Stu Rosa and his moonwalking mate, Edgar Mitchell. And unfortunately, they're all passed away. There is Alan Shepard on the moon. The first time they used the stripes around the thigh, the arms, and the helmet to distinguish the commander or the leader. They do it now for spacewalks on the International Space Station to denote the lead spacewalker, which were up to 93 pairs of spacewalks on the International Space Station, as I recall, and McLean and Nicole Ayers did those spacewalks on a couple of days ago. Of course, he was what a beautiful sight, he said, looking out the window, and that was the banner on Time magazine, and putting him on there. Strange that this was a new look in 1961 of what an astronaut should look like in a silver spacesuit. And there he is being suited up for that famous mission flight up there. And there is his daughter, who champions his name wherever she goes. Laura Shepard Churchley, and I met her husband this January, and there's Mark one of the few pictures you'll see of that scoundrel clean shaven. I'll tell you that right now, right, brother Tom? But what a great person. She actually came in the museum while we were starting to go live, a half hour away from Stay Curious, when we did it in the back room, old school waves without a green screen. And I still regret I didn't twist her arm to get her on our set. But she knows me, and she knows that she'd like to come someday when it works out with her. I believe she winters in Colorado. There's our worm logo, the worm logo on the meatball. I kind of like it. All right, let's talk a few minutes about, as I have that up there, to talk about the serious cut in science, serious cut in all areas of space exploration that is proposed by the Trump administration, and with NASA really taking it on the chin, maybe compared to other agencies. But this is a government-wide slash of resources, financial resources, and a lot of this is 5 years after the COVID pandemic, when we all had a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of you started working from home, and then you kept working from home and kept working from home, and some of you are reluctant to go back to an office, but hey, that's how I work, is in an office and at home too, by the way. Okay, so anyway, the proposal, let's go over them a little bit, some high points. I've read 4 or 5 things just like you have, or maybe you haven't. As Mitch Rothman, hi buddy, how you doing? He says I often get my news from Stay Curious about some current events. Well, I'm going to read some highlights from a couple reports, but one I'm going to emphasize is from politician Newt Gingrich, okay, and Newt Gingrich, who is a Republican, retired Republican Speaker of the House under the Clinton administration. and a candidate for president in 2012. Bob Walker, Pennsylvania congressman. Uh, he led the House Science Committee, and he's founder and CEO of Moonwalker Associates. And Charles Miller, co-founder and former CEO of Link Global, a former NASA senior advisor for commercial space. So people that are familiar with politics, familiar with why these things are going on, and this is in the Real Clear Science, a publication online called Real Clear Science, and I'll paraphrase and add some other input in there. But to me, it was a good read. I had 3 or 4 people read it. They said the same thing. It's a pretty accurate thing of what's going on and maybe why it's going on. The bottom line is NASA needs to modernize and reform its practices that have permeated into the 21st century. Those practices deviating from the 20th century NASA, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. While President Trump declared that we must dominate space and beat China in space, there's a bunch of cuts that could threaten us to be a world leader in space. We perceive ourselves as a world leader in science, and in some things I think we are, and some things I think we aren't. Science school scores, we know, are atrocious compared to Japan, China, and other European countries, and we're trying to make headway of that. But we need to continue our leadership in all areas. NASA needs programs and policies that reflect new realities posed by world competitors. China in particular is what this article says. And it says we need a space agency focused on not clinging to its past. Well, you know, when the only thing you can talk about going to the moon is the past, what else you got to cling to? For 50 years, every administration has been going back to the moon, and I'm trying to put a program together of headlines and magazine covers. We're going back to the moon in 1991. We're going to Mars in 1995. And we know it takes money. It takes a commitment of big piles of money, something that China's got no problem doing because they're a communist country. They don't have political changes. The leadership are all on board with their one vision to conquer the world, it seems like, and making the moon their high ground. But we've not been even off the Earth 250 miles but one time in 53 years, and that was the Jared Isaacman spacewalk, the future NASA administrator spacewalk, and extended the spaceship out to 850 miles. But outside of that, in 53 years since Apollo 17 in December 1972, we have gone no further than 250 miles off the Earth. And that is like a barely off the skin of the orange, so to speak. Something that was pointed out by this group of people that wrote this, Newt Gingrich, Bob Walker, and Charles Miller, is that committees dominate decision making, and that's not good. The space agency needs to cut committees, speed up reviews, address risk aversion, and reform procurement. And they're confident Jared Isaacman will do this as administrator. And this is not this has been a big beef with all the NASA legends that I've been privileged to hang out with over my last 8 years here, particularly Mr. Lee Solid, who passed away. Lee was the godfather of the Saturn V rocket. He was responsible for all the engines on board of it, 33 of them, as the lead scientist for Rocketdyne and Rockwell that built them. And he kept saying there's too much risk aversion. You got to take the risk. You got to light the candle and see what happens. You just can't keep doing this stuff in simulations. That was the late Lee Solid, and we miss you, Lee. And he did 3 excellent Stay Curious programs. Google his name in our YouTube channel here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So a couple of your comments I'm trying to look at here. Yes, we do know that SpaceX and Elon Musk has got his claws deep into the government as the, I don't know what you want to call him, but he's slashing stuff left and right in this new budget world that they created there. And, of course, some of that's good, but you just can't blanket and start chopping things. One interesting thing pointed out in this Real Clear Science article was taking the James Webb Telescope. Let me show up some of my pictures here because I put some pictures up there for you to look at while I'm talking away here. Thank you, Marty. There's an idea of a Chinese base on the moon, folks. Okay, with all the flags and glory and colors and so forth. Even a little observatory in the back. It looks like there. China has said they want boots on the ground on the moon by 2030. They have a very systematic and ambitious program where they are sending uncrewed spacecraft to the south pole of the moon where the water is, where everybody wants to go. They put a rover on there about 6 months ago. They've got an orbiter around the moon, and they're sending back more rovers and more orbiters. One thing that NASA's neglected to make accommodations for, and this is my opinion, not from this article, is a communication system around the moon and Mars. We have no satellites orbiting the moon that can relay information except one lunar reconnaissance orbiter that's 12 years old, and it wasn't built for that. But we haven't landed an unmanned rover on the moon ever. Okay, Russia's done it 3 times in the 70s and 80s. China's done it. Japan's done it. Didn't or India did it. I'm mistakenly who did it. Someone can correct me on that. So how do you beat the Russians to the moon? Not by slashing the budget of NASA 25%. I'll tell you that right now. Earth, Mars, and the moon in ratio. This is the scale of these worlds, the most talked about worlds in space flight, space age, and everything. That's actually an Apollo 10 photo of the moon, showing you a little bit of the backside that we can't see. I hate that. That's not what the moon looks like from Earth, but looked like on the way back from the moon. Apollo 10, MarQ right there, Sea of Tranquility's right there, this part of the moon here. Anyway, I just have to point that out. I think that's the Apollo 16 view of the Baja Peninsula in America there. But yes, Mars is half the size of Earth, and the moon is half the size of Mars, or a quarter the size of Earth. Surprising, isn't it, to some of you that Mars isn't bigger? But it isn't. It's a small world. It's a very dynamic world. It's a very cold world. It's like Antarctica. And to go there 30 million miles away, that is closest, it's 40 million miles away. And right now it's over 100 million miles away. And you can see it tonight in the night sky as the red star almost directly overhead. And there'll be 2 stars, bright stars to the right of it. Those stars are in the constellation Gemini, the twins, Castor and Pollux. And then the moon, 1/4 the size. We really don't know how to live on the moon more than 3 days and eat kind of fuel for food. So, what if you're living on the moon for a month or a half a year, like we do on the International Space Station? What things would we learn like we've learned on the International Space Station? One important thing we've learned on the International Space Station is for some astronauts, about a third of them, their eyeballs don't go back the way they were when they came back to Earth, and they have to wear glasses for nearsightedness. Hey, do we need an ophthalmologist to go to Mars to fit everybody with glasses once they get there? Or the moon? I don't know. But these are little tiny considerations to understand, because the human body also seems to suffer. The kidneys are being looked at now for renal failure on long duration missions. Could be possible. So these are some things that we need to move on. And I believe we need to learn things in the moon, in the low moon environment, low lunar environment, instead of go traipsing off to Mars, which is 9 months away, easy. And then you got to stay there 3 months so you can get back in 9 months. And to me, the biggest factor of space travel and going to the moon and Mars is food. We know how to make water, okay, and recycling our urine is one of it. but on the International Space Station. But you just can't manufacture a hamburger in space, or even lettuce or whatever, to the satisfaction to feed people for a long, long, long time. So, looking at those points that have come up that NASA has to address. All right, we've got this two rovers on the Mars. Curiosity's been on there 12 years. And Perseverance is in its fourth or fifth year, and Percy dropped off a helicopter called Ingenuity that was going to do 5 flights. Guess what? It did 72 flights and became a reconnaissance vehicle to scout where the Perseverance should go. All right, now this rover goes about one football field a day. In about an 8-hour drive, it can go about 300 yards. All right. The other one, Curiosity, can only go about a fourth of that distance in the same time frame. So they hopped this one up to go a little bit faster and a little more durable, and it's up a little bit higher than Curiosity. But it picked up scoops of suspect-looking material, maybe crystals in a rock. It drilled into, put them in a test tube, dropped them on the surface of the moon. I mean, of Mars. And there's like a dozen of them already. I think 2 dozen of them already laying on the moon, on Mars, ready to be picked up. But NASA doesn't even have on the drawing board that vehicle to pick them up. All right. And this is addressed in this article written by Gingerich and others. Let me find that. We need to drastically rethink how to do science on Mars. The Mars sample return mission was originally estimated at $3 billion when it was launched, when it was figured out like 10 years ago. A year ago, the Biden administration put it on hold till late 2030s at $11 billion. All right, so leaving those test tubes on there for another 10 years before we pick them up. At this pace, SpaceX will be delivering astronauts to Mars who will just walk up and pick up the ground samples, put them in their pocket. If I was China, I'd seriously build a vehicle that will go and harvest these under our nose and bring them back. All right, the science is there waiting to be taken, and then say, hey, we'll share you the raw materials if you share with us the science that you got on them. So this is a crazy concept to not build a vehicle to bring these back, not already have it on the lander. That was how Russia brought back samples from the moon. They brought back about 5 or 6 ounces on some of their missions, all right, by having a canister that had a rocket on it and met it in space. So we also did this with an asteroid, Ruag, who has some of its materials now are in the Smithsonian and other places. So we're not going to get these test tubes that are on Mars from harvested by Perseverance for a long, long time. And the money's not there to even build the machine to go get it. The Webb telescope. Here's an interesting point made about the Webb telescope that NASA needs to solve, that they're pointing out their wasted money. The Webb telescope has done amazing things. It was supposed to cost $1 billion with $1 billion, but it cost $10 billion with a B, 10 times more. And they're calling, these writers of this article are calling it irresponsible for NASA to let any project go balloon 10 times its cost, okay? Once it gets to a certain level, you have to cut bait and forget about it, maybe. And they call it a blunder that should not be repeated. And there are plans for on-orbit assembly of larger telescopes. NASA knows how to do this now. And if we can build a constellation of 6,000 satellites with these SpaceX rockets going up every 3 or 4 days here on the Space Coast, we certainly can figure out something how to build a huge telescope in space that would be less than what the Webb costs. But the Webb telescope's going to be lasted, I'll bet it's used for 50 years. Okay. there's nothing to really make it break down, um, and it way past the moon, so it'll never hit anything or re-enter Earth's atmosphere. It's 1 million miles past the Earth right now. So think about that. As fabulous as the Webb telescope is it smart for NASA to have spent $10 billion instead of the $1 billion when Congress approved it? These are congressmen beefing about this and saying, look, we in our committee said that this, we'd approve this for taxpayer money, and then you ended up 10 times what we thought you would spend. So that's something to consider. How about the sun? Big old ball star up there in the sky gives us everything on Earth. We would not have life, of course, without it. This is a view of the sun today, May 6, 2025, and it has a sunspot in the middle that's naked eye. So if you got those eclipse glasses left over, go out and look at it, and you'll see with your own eye a storm on the sun that is cooler than the 6,000 degree surface around it, Fahrenheit. And that's why it looks darker, but it is an electromagnetic energy of a positive and a negative charge hitting at that place on the sun and creating this immense eruption that cools the sun, throws material out in our solar system that is hit by all the planets, and we call it aurora when it enters our poles. Well, we are getting towards the end of an 11-year cycle where the sun has a peak of sunspots, and 6 years from now, in 2030, there'll be no sunspots on the sun, all right, which will be a good thing for space travelers because the sun builds up the harmful rays that are thrown out into the solar system. We call them coronal mass ejections. And one big coronal mass ejection is a real famous one in 1859 called the Carrington event. Now, 1859, right before the Civil War, what was going on that was electrical? That'd be telegraph. Telegraph lines all over the place. And this solar storm from the sun in 1859 melted phone lines, telegraph lines, melted them. And telegraph operators touching their thing got shocked. It was quite an event. We've had some minor events in the 70s and 80s where grid patterns were knocked out in Canada by solar flare activity. And this is not a case of if, but when this could happen again. Our economy of the earth is so dependent on electrical devices that we would be crippled if a major solar flare hit the earth, and it could literally wipe out all the hard drives on earth. And then what are you going to do? All right. Well, you hope your hard drive's on the moon with Chris Stott's business, Lone Star, that he did do two successful hard drives of his business on the Intuitive Machines lander. But so this is something that NASA's not even looking at. We need satellites to predict these solar storms so we can, and they take about 3 days to get here, and we are predicting them. An excellent site called Space Weather is where I got this picture, does that. So that's something that we're not doing, that money needs to be spent for instead of taking it away. How about defending our planet from an asteroid that is going to hit us? And of course, several famous movies have been made about it, Hollywood blockbusters done on it, saving the Earth from an asteroid. But this is, again, not a case of if, but when. And this is yesterday's chart of meteors that blew up in the Earth's atmosphere called bolides. There's over 2,300 objects called potentially hazardous asteroids, 2,349 to be effective. We're watching right now from the size of about 300 yards to 10 miles across, all right? And any one of those, if they hit us, particularly a city, could cause a cataclysmic event. Well, there is a planetary defending agency through that we're going to talk about Asteroid Day on June 30th that celebrates this. and money for that won't be spent if we get these budget cuts. Uh, Things cut back on the science directorate. So, are we going back to the moon then? Does this mean the end for the Artemis program if they cut a fourth of NASA's budget? All right. What are they going to do with all this hardware that's been built for Artemis and so forth? Well, so far, the talk is we will have the Artemis 2 4 astronauts wave at the moon from about 3,000 miles away, and that's scheduled for no later than April 2026, with 4 astronauts doing that in the Orion spacecraft. And then they say we're going to keep the money for Artemis 3 and go to the moon. Okay. But we're going to do it without the lunar gateway. We're not going to support the gateway that is a space station in lunar orbit that goes up maybe 1,000,000 miles and then comes down to 60 miles or so. Has the depot for the space starship moon lander to dock with astronauts that came up on the gateway as proposed here. So no gateway. Does that mean no moon landing for Artemis 3? We don't know. And Gateway is a big ESA project, the main habitat where the astronauts will live. The cylinder is called Halo. That's been completed and ready to ship to the U.S. Several of these pieces and parts are under construction in Europe. And I've talked to several people that are involved with that about it. And they hinted 6 months ago that they didn't think NASA was wanting to use the gateway. So, yeah, all right. There's a little bit of thank you. I'm getting a little phone backup from Marty there. I'll turn that off. Wormwood says we need to go back to the moon first. So thank you, Wormwood. The noise is coming over. You're talking like a bad phone call. Thank you, Cliff Watson down there in Australia. And Rob Mecklenburg joined us here too. So this is outlining some of the talk that's going on right now, a week after, within the week before, and it was announced that NASA is going to have some deep cuts coming up here, but all this is going to be presented to Congress, and they will, hopefully the constituents like you are telling them, hey, we don't want to get rid of Gateway. We don't want to abandon going to the moon. This is a heritage of America being strong and so forth. So let's see what other points that I want to make that I've heard on things. The human, the uncrewed, and the crewed, the science side and the crewed human spaceflight side of NASA should be transformed, but not mindlessly cut. All right. And a big political point is we can't let China beat us to the moon. Yet we certainly buy a lot of products from China. All right. Though that tariff going in effect might stop some of that. But, just within reach, grab something near you and look at the bottom of it like this mirror here. And yep, made in China. So, but we hope we can fix that slowly, but surely. So there's a few outlines of things maybe you didn't think about that NASA has been misspending money or things that they've been doing that has inflated their budget, particularly the risk aversion and not taking risks on there. But it's all about man's greatest adventure, the Apollo era, is not thought about like that as man's greatest adventure. They're thinking now of the commercial applications of going back to the moon, people making money off of it, selling things made on the moon, on Earth, that sort of thing. Harvesting, yet the science, of course, is going to always hopefully be paramount. There, by the way, is the lander that's proposed to be on Artemis 3 with the lunar module beside it. Okay. And I just don't think those landing legs are out far enough for this. I think they need to be out about a football field, 300 feet there to. But still, there's another concept there with two starships there. Plus, the big deal about the starship, once it leaves the Earth, it's got to be refueled again to land on the moon, and that takes something like 10 to 20 fueling trips in Earth orbit, or is that going to be in cislunar orbit, or where? So, still a lot of drawing board stuff to figure out as we scratch our heads. Most people are saying, why not let NASA evolve into what the Federal Aviation Administration did to oversee American spaceflight? After all, the Wright brothers in 1903 flew the first time, and then by 1915 or 20, the FAA was formed, as well as the NACA, the National Advisory Council on Aeronautics, to oversee space flight, air flight, okay, to keep it standardized around the world and such things like that. So why not get Blue Origin, SpaceX, Axiom, Boeing, and all these other great companies involved with taking over the financial burden, and let them make money off of it, and let NASA be the administration to oversee things on there, because we certainly don't want to see these are as China rovers, orbiters around Mars and the moon. Okay, it's been a dream since Chesley Bonestell did this artwork in 1953, over 70 years ago, that man would leave the bounds of Earth and become a multi-planet species. It's everybody's dream, but we must take pragmatic steps, in my opinion, and we must adhere to the laws of science and physics, of course, and listen to those scientific leaders. But then we need them to provide accurate financial figures of what it can actually take to sustain such a drive to go back to the moon and then eventually build a colony on Mars. And when you hear Elon Musk talking about he's going to have 100 people on Mars in 5 years, well, I'm not so sure about that, because this starship of his hasn't made it past Jamaica on the last two flights. It got destroyed, and so they got Starship 9 ready to go here by the end of the month of May. So we'll see how that works out for them. So hope it does work out, because a lot depends on it. So hope you enjoyed this look at some NASA news and my opinions, with some written words from some of the political leaders, as well as other places I've got in there, and hope that you enjoyed that. Many of you aren't privileged like I am to talk to some of the legends of NASA and other people working in the industry today, and they definitely want to go to the moon, but you have to have the infrastructure there to support it once we get there. So why burn up? It's cost $1 billion. What was it? $4.5 billion to launch Artemis 1 uncrewed. Well over $5 billion to do Artemis 2, and Artemis 3, the moon landing, is going to probably be $10 billion range to do that. Could we turn it over to private industries and say, have a go at it? We'll support you with our science and technology and what we've learned. All right, and see how things work out. So, no Bucks, no Buck Rogers. That's exactly a beautiful way to end it, Steve Jokums. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers. And we know it takes a pile of money, but the money must be spent right. Yet some of it must be taken risks, and know that we've got to finally stick our toe in this big ocean called the universe. So thank you all for watching today. If you did enjoy today, you'll enjoy tomorrow, with Bob Granath is going to talk about looking at the past and NASA's famous Hangar S, where the Mercury astronauts trained with a bunch of other primates down the hall. until they got tired of that noise and smell and bought the Holiday Inn in Cocoa Beach and made that their headquarters there. So, Bob Granath, we're looking forward to a great talk from you, former public affairs officer for several of the legacy companies of Apollo and Shuttle. So until then, I'm thanking Marty. Let's bring my buddy back up here. Marty, you still there, my friend?
I'm still here.
All right. Cliff Watson, all the way down in Australia, was getting too much feedback from you there. So hope things are nice up there. We're going to rack up Bob Granath tomorrow, Marty. I know you're looking forward to him. Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Definitely looking forward to Bob.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to Marty coming back next week. But there he is on a flat Marty there. So thank you, buddy. So appreciate you all out there. And until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum or on Stay Curious to bridge the space between us. Thank you.
It's a wrap, Mark.
Okay. Give it a couple seconds and shut it off there.
Yeah, I got it.
Did that sound pretty good?